He was shot after arguing with two men as he sat in his car. He died while trying to flag down a police officer 2 blocks from the street corner where he was shot. Hey, if you were a fan of the band Riot, or if you're just kind of interested in kind of tragic rock stories, I've got something pretty interesting here for you today. So this band, I was a huge fan of Riot back in the 1980s. And it was kind of a strange thing back then to be a fan of this group, simply because whenever you tell people that you loved this band Riot, they'd always say, Quiet Riot? And then you had to explain to them that there was this whole other band that had all these albums. And I just absolutely loved these guys. I don't remember exactly what happened, but I think it was one night on the radio, some station was playing new music or lesser known music or something. And I remember that this DJ played this song, and the song was Born in America. And I don't know what it was about it, but for some reason that just jumped out of the speakers at me, this song. It was so cool. The guitar hook, the vocals, the lyrics were kind of cool. I don't know, it just had this energy, and I just fell in love with it. And so it was probably, it was the next day or within a couple of days, I'm at the record store looking for this band Riot and looking for the album Born in America. And then I found it. And this is the actual one that I bought at the time. And here it is, Riot, Born in America. Now, I got to be honest with you. When I got to that bin and I pulled it out and I saw this, I almost didn't buy it. And the reason was, strangely enough, and this is just how shallow I really am, it was the album cover. There was something about this. I looked at that and I saw these little seals, whatever this thing was, and there was something, I don't know what it was, but I looked at that and I thought, I can't buy that. It was, well, and I didn't know anything about them at the time. This seal, I didn't realize this, but it had been, you start flipping through the bin and you see a couple of other records that have this seal on it. And it was, John, I think they called him Johnny the Mighty Tior, and he'd been on all of their albums from the beginning. But for some reason, as a 14, 15-year-old kid, I just didn't get it. Fortunately, I got over my shallow response to the cover, and I bought it. And I took this thing home, and I got to tell you, I loved this record front to back, top to bottom. I played this. I was so happy because it was so good. I played this thing over and over and over. And as a result, I started getting fascinated by this group. Now here's the thing. This singer for this band here on this album was a guy named Rhett Forrester. And so I just love this guy's voice. There was just something about his energy and the way he kind of had this growl, and it was just awesome. So I fell in love with this. So the next thing you know, I'm at the record store again, and I'm buying another album, which is this one right here, which is called Restless Breed. And this is the album, it's the studio album before the other one. And this one also has Rhett Forrester singing on it. And I bought this one and also just absolutely just loved this album. That's Rhett Forester right there, by the way. And just, again, thought this album was just incredible and listened to it over and over and over again. I was so into these guys. And then sometime around here, Kiss is going on tour for the album Lick It Up. And guess who's opening up for Kiss? Vandenberg, who I also love because I have all their stuff. Riot is opening up for Kiss. And then, of course, I'm a Kiss fan, so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be amazing, so there's no way I'm missing this show. Of course, this is Kiss on their first tour without the makeup. And I'll be honest with you, I was excited to see Vandenberg because I always kind of liked them. I was more excited to see Kiss because I'm a huge Kiss fan from childhood, but I was most excited, weirdly enough, to see Riot. So the night of the show comes. We arrive at the place, Kiss, Vandenberg, and Riot, and we have this announcement that Riot has canceled. So one of the great tragedies of my life is that I never got to see Riot in concert. I saw sometime later with the band Atom Bomb Sandy Slavin, who was the drummer for Riot, actually was with Adam Bomb, so I saw him. And Phil Fate, who was the original bassist for Riot. I'm not even sure he played on any records. He was actually in Adam Bomb's band. So I got to see at least those two guys play with Adam Bomb, which was an amazing concert, by the way, but that's a whole nother story. We'll do a video on Adam Bomb sometime, because I actually really like that stuff too. But this album in particular, there are so many tunes on here, but go, just if nothing else, if you've never really listened to these guys, go find the song Restless Breed, which is, the title track off of this album. Just go track that song down. So from there, I don't know what it was. It was sometime later. I found this. This is Rhett Forrester was only on 3 albums with Riot, and this was the other one. And this one came in between those other 2. This was just this live album. And then he left the band Riot and then went off and started kind of a solo career. And I only bought one of those albums. It was this one right here. It was called Even the Score. And he does a cover of, I'd be lying if I told you I loved this album. I actually don't think I listened to it too much. I bought it just because I liked him so much, and then I just didn't spend a lot of time with it. Maybe I would love it. I was buying so many records, I just didn't listen to everything I bought. But he did do a version, which is kind of cool, a version of the song Ready for Love, which is an old song written by Mick Ralphs from Mott the Hoople that they ended up doing on the first Bad Company album. And Rhett Forrester does it on this particular record. And one of these days we'll go back and we'll actually do some discussions about these records. That's not what the purpose of this video is today. This video goes into something a little more personal and a little more, it kind of plays on the fact that this band, Riot, for whatever reason, and they are notoriously known for having bad luck and tragedy in their history. And Rhett Forrester, just by the way, was the second singer. The original singer was a guy named Guy Speranza, and he had been on several albums prior to this. And then he was on an album called Fire Down Under, which was amazing. And then he left the band. And then they brought Rhett Forrester in. And Guy Speranza, I went back and I started buying that stuff too. And anyway, like I said, I just loved this band so much. Just the Rhett Forrester stuff, the Guy Speranza stuff, it was just fantastic. Why I wanted to make this video today was actually not even just related to the music. Because, since I do this channel, a lot of people make comments, hey, you need to do a video about this, do you remember this? And we get people commenting and sending emails and stuff all the time. And I've had a bunch of people say, hey, you need to do some videos about Riot. And of course I'm thinking, of course I do. And so I just haven't gotten around to it. And so I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go do kind of some of the things I normally do and just start doing some research, go search some old newspapers, look for some record reviews and things like that. And then what happened is I thought, first thing I'm going to do, because you search on the word Riot and you're not going to find anything because that can be so much stuff. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to search and see if I can find anything about Rhett Forrester, who was the singer in this version of the band. What I found, the first thing that popped up, you're looking at on your screen right now. And then I remembered something that I'd just completely forgotten about. Rhett Forrester had actually been killed back in the 90s. It was on January 22nd of 1994. And I'd forgotten about this because years and years ago, I had been looking around, seeing what I could find out about him, just because sometimes I would just do this. You know what this stuff is. You start going down a rabbit hole and you're looking for things. And I remember seeing that he'd been killed, but I didn't know anything else about it. And it says, as you can see right there, Rhett Forrester, I love you and I miss you. Love, Mom. And so then you look at here and what this is from the Atlanta Constitution newspaper, and they'd had this thing on May 25th, 1998. This thing where people could just post memorials, and it was Memorial Day, 1998. And so you have all these different people, and then right there in the middle of the page, a former rock star, Rhett Forrester, and his mom has posted this thing to remember Rhett. So I thought, okay, I have got to go, just because I remember all this stuff and I love these guys so much, I need to go figure out what happened. So then I went back and I started doing some more searches, And I came across this article right here. It popped up. And this is in the Atlanta Journal from March 20th of 1995. And you'll see that headline that says, "Son's Slaying Haunts Mom." And then you see this picture of this woman holding a picture of Rhett Forrester. And then it says, LaFortune Forrester holds a photo of her son Rhett, who was shot as he sat in his car at the intersection of Lovejoy Street and Merritt's Avenue. And I thought, okay, I've got to read this. And so I read this thing, and I just, what I want to do today is I want to read this to you. Because this is such a fascinating kind of human story. Story of humanity when you have somebody that you have a mother that's dealing with this kind of thing and her reaction to it, to somebody that for me as a kid, this was a guy that was, like for so many of us, he was one of those outlets for us. We'd go into our bedroom and we'd put headphones on or just crank up the speakers or whatever, and we had this hard rock, heavy metal music that would kind of provide an outlet for us. So for those of us that played guitar, we would sit there with our guitars and just play solos to it and that kind of thing. And this was one of those bands for me. So a guy like Rhett Forrester was kind of important to my development, to my early, teenage years. I loved this guy. And his voice was one of those things, was part of the soundtrack of my life. And so I see this and I thought, I got to check this out. I need to read this and kind of see what it has to say. And I think you will find this fascinating. So I'm going to read this article to you. And again, I think you will find this whole story really, really interesting. So, cases among 70 unsolved last year. So just to kind of put this in perspective too, what happened, he actually was killed on January 22nd of 1994. So it was years after this stuff. These Riot albums came out in, let's see, the first one was in, Restless Breed was in 82, the live album was in 82, and then Born in America was in 83. And then he put out that solo album that I showed you right there in 88. And then this is, 6 years after that. So he was killed on January 22nd of 1994. LaFortune Forrester says this much is certain about her son's slaying in Atlanta 15 months ago. He wasn't where he was supposed to be. Rhett Forester, a 37-year-old rock singer who once played with a New York-based heavy metal rock band called Riot, had risen before dawn, left his DeKalb County apartment, and driven to Techwood Homes, one of the city's most crime-ridden public housing projects. He was shot after arguing with two men as he sat in his car at the intersection of Lovejoy Street and Merritt's Avenue, a block behind the new Olympic Village, said his mother, who lives in Tucker. He died while trying to flag down a police officer 2 blocks from the street corner where he was shot. Atlanta police say Forrester may have been trying to buy drugs. Quote, he had no business being where he was or doing what he was doing, LaFortune Forrester said, but he didn't deserve to be murdered. Then it says dying at the hands of a stranger. Rhett Forrester was among the first people slain in Atlanta last year when the number of homicides fell to 191, the lowest in 8 years. Forrester's death is among 70 unsolved homicides from 1994, including 56 where police have no clue to what, if any, relationship the killer had with the victim. In Atlanta, a city where a victim is more likely to die at the hands of an acquaintance or a stranger than a family member or a spouse, police claim Forrester's death was one of a growing number of homicides that began either as a robbery or a drug deal. Quote, we have a lot of stranger-to-stranger violence, said Deputy Chief C.B. Jackson. Some of it is unpredictable, where a robber just happens to come upon a victim and for whatever reason decides to kill. There are other situations that grow out of drug trafficking. Now, just another thing is I was kind of looking around for things on this topic, and there's not a lot of information out there, honestly. I dug through a bunch of newspapers, just couldn't find a lot. But on the current Wikipedia entry, it says that people say that this was a carjacking. And I remember back around that time, you were hearing a lot more about carjackings happening at the time. And so who knows? And that's kind of the point here, is that This went unsolved. But then this story is just so it's heartbreaking, and it's interesting as I read this about his mom and what she was trying to do. So anyway, that's why I just wanted to share this with you, because it's just such a fascinating story. Forrester said she called police 5 times before she reached the officer who was with her son when he had died. But when she asked him about her son's final minutes, he wouldn't talk to me. She said, he asked me, "Why do you want to know?" "He's my only child," she pleaded. "I want to know." "It will just hurt you more," the officer responded, she said. Despairing that her son, a musician who drew crowds of fans in Europe and Japan, had become anonymous in death, Forrester began haunting the area where he died, searching for his killer. Quote, "I was going down there regularly in my grief, putting up signs and crying the whole time," she said. My own little investigation. The distraught white woman nailing up flyers drew attention from residents of the predominantly black area. Quote, "I was down there every weekend all around about a 4 or 5 block radius of North Avenue and Techwood," she said. "I was doing my own little investigation." During those weekly pilgrimages, Forrester said she laid flowers bedecked with black ribbons at the spot where her son was slain. She wore bright clothing to attract attention, she said. Isn't this fascinating? I mean, here's this mom, and she's going out of her way to wear these bright clothes and be visible. Anyway, just like I said, this was so fascinating to me. Quote, "Every time I went down there, I hoped someone would shoot me," she said. "I wasn't fearful. My only child, all I had in life, was gone." Eventually, one man approached her claiming to know who killed her son, but he wanted money in return for the killer's name. She said, quote, "I gave him some money," she said, "but I didn't tell anybody." She also arranged for him to talk with a homicide detective, but the meeting never took place. The officer and the informant both claimed the other failed to show up at the appointed time. The man did give Forrester the name of a suspect, but police say an identification from a paid informant unwilling to talk directly with the police is not strong enough evidence to justify an arrest. Lieutenant Danny Agin, who supervises the police department's homicide division, said police often turn up a name or a street name for a suspected killer, but, quote, "without someone coming forward and assisting in our investigation to the point of cooperation with our efforts to solve a crime, we're stuck." So, 15 months after her son's death, Forrester is frustrated that the detective investigating her son's slaying rarely spoke with her. Angry that the name of the suspected killer she had acquired did not lead to an arrest, and that a $1,000 reward she posted remains unclaimed. And this fascinates me so much for a couple different reasons. First of all, watching a mother dealing with this and what she's doing and the reaction that she's having at this. You know, this is her only child, and she just finds herself in this massive grief. But the other thing is, it's fascinating to see rock stars from these different directions, because a rock star is just somebody's kid. You know, they're just a person that's out there that's visiting their mom. And we've done shows in here where we read newspaper articles about, you know, like Tommy Thayer just going home and visiting his family, and Steve Perry going home. And we have these videos up on our channel about this stuff, because that, you know, they have these lives, these families that still exist. But then the other part is from a fan standpoint, watching this and watching how these rock stars fall sometimes into anonymity. Because at this point in 1994, who was even thinking about Rhett Forrester? And so you have this person that at one point, it wasn't like he was the biggest rock star in the world. He wasn't. But he was playing these big shows. They were big enough to be touring with Kiss, and some little, you know, young 15-year-old kid in Denver was super excited to see them. And yet somehow so many of these famous people, or even, you know, semi-famous people, kind of fall into obscurity. And then these tragedies happen, and then it's just kind of lost. So anyway, let's keep going. As a result, she said she has largely given up hope. Now she works to try to keep alive her son's memory. She has persuaded Atlanta's Hard Rock Cafe to display several of her son's mementos, including his photograph, harmonica, and one of his T-shirts. Quote, "Rhett wasn't just some long hair in the wrong place at the wrong time," she said. "He was somebody." And that's the point. Like I said, when I read this, that was the thing that jumped out at me more than anything. You're watching this just kind of tragic experience that this mother had. Because to me, Rhett Forester is a rock star. He's a guy that I see these pictures, I read about him, I listen to his music, I'm in my bedroom playing guitar to this stuff, and it's one of those things, this escape thing that became really, really important for me as a teenager. But here he was, this tragic situation that happened that nobody really knows, and then it goes unsolved, which makes it even worse. Anyway, so getting back to where we were at the beginning, Rhett Forester was this really kind of amazing singer. He looked cool. He just had this cool look, this cool presence, and he had this amazing singing voice. And then when Guy Speranza, who had really kind of helped put Riot on the map, when he left, they get this guy on and they put out these albums, Restless Breed. They put out this Riot Live album. And then they put out the one that I originally found, which was Born in America. And I'll just, again, encourage you, if you've never listened to Born in America or Restless Breed or any of the Riot stuff, I love this band. I mean, you just go back several albums even before this. Go find Fire Down Under, which is an amazing album. That was with the previous singer. The album Narita. Anyway, they were just great. It was great rock and roll. It was great music. And just fascinating. Now, like I said, I'm doing this channel and I start going back and doing this research and I find these kind of fascinating stories. Anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. I thought there'd be some people who would find this type of story kind of interesting, looking back on this kind of these tragic things that sometimes happen, especially when we kind of forget who these people were. So anyway, hey, thanks for taking the time to watch this video with me today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow the channel if you're not following the channel already. Please like the video. If you know other people that'd be interested in this kind of thing, we really encourage you to share this with other people. Leave your comments. Do you remember this band? Do you remember the music? Do you remember these two different singers? And do you remember those changes? And what did you think about those two things? And anyway, with that, have yourself a fantastic day.